Right. All right. Well, welcome everybody. People are coming in. Appreciate you all coming, making time in your afternoons and evenings to come be here. My name is Byron. I'm going to be your speaker tonight, and I am the director of learning here at Gauntlet. So I really focus a lot on the curriculum, making sure we're keeping things up to date, making sure you have the most pertinent information when you go out and you have your job and you're an AI engineer or an AI first engineer. So uh, it's an interesting problem to solve, honestly. As many of you can probably attest, keeping up with AI is really hard. There is a lot going on, and this topic we're talking about tonight has really started to surface its ugly head in a way that we all kind of knew it was happening, and then it just really like hit the wall hard, uh, where we start seeing like major issues with major companies and their apps, and everyone's trying to figure out what to do about this. Now, you may not have felt this as much maybe in your roles or maybe in the apps that you've used. But I'm going to show some metrics here in a second here that are hopefully going to be a bit more eye-opening. It was definitely for me. And then we're going to talk about how to stop this from happening. It's interesting though. I will say that there are a number of apps that I use. I won't name names, but they're all big companies. I'm sure you use a lot of the same apps where I have just found the most random and annoying bugs that I have never seen before. And I don't know, I don't think it's a configuration thing, but some of the most simplest of actions will cause something to break. And I just sit here, I sit back in my chair and I go, this is an AI problem. This is a uniquely AI problem where we are seeing so many more issues. But then the other shocker is these issues don't get resolved, right? They just kind of stick around for a while. So anyway, it's there's all sorts of big problems and little problems that we're seeing. But
Hey,
our
Byron,
jobs as engineers is to fix it. Yeah.
quick question. Sorry, we didn't address this, but how do you want questions? Some people, they're able to raise their hands. Do you want
hmm
them to be able to ask questions along the way, or would you prefer that all questions are safe at the end?
You know what? Let's have them do it on the way. I'll find some spots to pause, and then we can take some questions. I think
Okay,
that's
so
probably yeah.
I'll say to the audience real quick, if you have a question, there's a little button that says raise your hand, and that will put you in queue. And then when Byron's ready, we'll click allow to talk, and you can ask your question, and we'll just go through questions that way.
Awesome. Okay. Uh, Austin, we will not be covering that. We will not be covering how to bundle map files in our automated updates. That's not quite the scope of this one. It's more of a detail, but we'll get there. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started. Oh, let me give you one more bit of an intro here. So, um, Tom reminded me of this just a second ago, and I it's an analogy that I love and that is it's a little bit personal spot for me. So just so you all know, I spent 10 years as a mobile engineer. That's all I did. I did Android and I did iOS. And at the time that was really rare to do both. I do have my preferences for one versus the other, but I did a lot of work in each. And I saw the mobile revolution happen as a developer. And so when the App Store came out, like we were all just going crazy trying to build these things. And but the interesting thing is what we're seeing today with AI is very similar to what we saw with the mobile with the mobile revolution. And what I mean by that is when apps first came out, when the App Store opened up and everybody was building their apps, they all looked like mini web pages. And so we all got these apps that looked like mini web pages because that's what we knew. And all the apps that we had in the App Store were similar to that, were like web pages. And then things started happening. I remember specific libraries coming out. I remember when Facebook introduced the hamburger menu, and that was just like blew everybody's mind. We're like, what a hamburger menu? You got to be kidding me. That's amazing. Apple had their human interface guidelines that really steered the way that and still influences how mobile apps are today. But over those years, then we started to identify there are applications that we can do that we've never done before because of a smartphone. And so, for example, there was no web app to call a random stranger to come pick you up. That didn't exist. And it couldn't exist because we didn't have a good way of doing it. And now we do with phones. We are at the early mobile stage of AI right now. There are a lot of things we are still trying to figure out every single day about how to use this, how to build with this. And it's my opinion that we are not thinking big enough. That there is, so at some point, someone's going to hit it and it's going to nail a concept, and suddenly it's going to just absolutely explode all over again, where we're going to realize the great power and capabilities that we have with these applications. And the application will probably change uh, the way that we see them, the way that we use them. And right now, we're just using the paradigms that we know. We know websites, we know chatbots, right? That's the current paradigm. But what if it wasn't chatbots? What if we figure out other ways to do it that are not that don't look like chatbots? I don't know the answers. I don't think anybody does quite yet, but I do feel like we're in those early stages, just like we were in mobile, where we're transitioning from what we can do right now to what we can actually really do once we really harness this and think about it differently. Part of this conversation today is going to be about that, about some of the lessons we're learning and the hard lessons we're learning. So let's get into it. All right. Who here is vibe coded? I don't know if you all have access to emojis, but I'm going to assume all of you are raising your hand. We've all vibe coded, right? It's a fun time. Wow, it makes programming so fun and so fast. You can just, with literally anything you can dream, you can see it, and it's amazing. So there's problems with that, right? Right. I have vibe coded an app with my son. I'm afraid to look at the code. Right. I don't even want to know what's under what's underneath that blanket. But anyway, so how do we fix this? So we can't do this in our jobs. We're engineers. We've got to make sure things are quality, that things are good. Here's some interesting stats that I think will highlight just how prevalent these issues are that we're seeing. AI-generated PRs contain 1.7 times more issues overall than if a human did it. So we're getting more issues. Are they sneaking through? You bet they are. Uh, so this isn't a reason to stop AI. This is a reason for us to stop and consider what we're doing with AI. I thought about this last night as I was preparing for this. If somebody came up to you 10 years ago and said, here is somebody who has 1.7, who makes errors 1.7 more times than any of your engineers, would you hire this person? You'd be like, no. But then you say, what if they could code 100 times faster? You'd be like, well, maybe. So it's this funny, like, kind of world we're living in. Um, but yeah, a lot more issues. Here's some more issues. Performance regressions are 7x more likely. Readability is 3x, has 3x more issues. Security vulnerabilities, that's a big one. 2.74. I mean, we're talking, these are some serious numbers here of more issues that could be coming out, and we don't even know what's going on. Like, we don't even know why initially, because we probably didn't read I'm not saying all of you, but I'm imagining a lot of us probably didn't read the code thoroughly. Error handling gaps, two times more common. Logic and correctness, 75% more common. Okay, this is the kind of stuff that's getting out there. Okay, this is the kind of issues that we're seeing. AI and LLMs are not doing a better quality job. They're just doing it a whole lot faster. And that's what we've been focused on for so long, right? 10x engineer, right? We hear that all the time. But what does that really mean? It's just they're just coding faster, but they're actually coding worse. So this is where we come in and go, okay, let's figure out what's going on. What can we do about this? All right. The first point here is, I think, pretty evident to anybody who's tried to do this, especially at a production level, right? We need to make sure there's a lot of context. So no knowledge, they have no knowledge of your business rules, no aware of architectural constraints. Sure, Claude Code will go through your code base and try to understand all these things. It will do its very best. And then, quite frankly, it does a really impressive job at that. But it's still missing constraints. It still doesn't know about this function that's buried over here that could actually be really helpful in this situation, right? There's a lot of things like that that we as engineers for years and years and years prided ourselves on knowing because we wrote the code by hand. And so we knew all the ins and outs. No understanding configuration patterns. This last one is something that I want to highlight here. And that is that a lot of times, and I do this, I think we all probably do this to some extent, we will keep a Claude session open or a Codex session open for so long that we just have exceeded the reasonable level of context in the context window. So the context window currently is what, 1 million for Opus, right? Okay. 1 million does not mean we should use 1 million tokens, right? I would stop at 100,000. If we get to 100,000, stop, consolidate, do something, start a new session, whatever it takes. But by that point, there are studies that are showing that it is starting to lose its ability to remember things at that point. Okay, so that's something that we have to be really cognizant of as well, is how much context are we using? And I'm guilty of this. I have context windows that are super bloated that I just want to keep going back to because it went so well last time, but it inevitably will cause more, well, not to say more issues, but it'll just, yeah, it will be more issues. They come at a more frequent clip, right? And so that's something we have to be really keen on, really aware of as we work through our code. But here's the bigger thing. We do not have the time to review all the code that an AI produces. Now, I want to challenge you here for a second because every company will say at some point, we want more code. Look at these things. They go so fast. 10x engineer, yada, 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 yada. Right? What if we said no? What if we said we're not doing that? What if we said we're actually going to go 2x faster or something to that extent, right? Before AI, issues arrived at human speed. We could review them, right? You had your engineer sitting next to you. You'd write code, he'd write code. Halfway through the week, you swap code and read each other's code. That was manageable, right? Now, things are coming out so fast. Oh, you can essentially vibe code your way through a problem, and it's like you just keep pushing out features. I had a situation where I had a junior engineer sitting next to me, and I asked him to go do some task, and he came back with a 300-line PR. And I looked at the PR, and about 20 lines in, I go, "This could all be done in about 3 lines." And so I went back to him and was like, "Hey, here's your solution. I'm just gonna give it to you and tell you what it is because what you have is way too much code. It's 3 lines to do something that he had essentially had an AI build 300 for. So there's these checks, right, that we need to be aware of. I'll say this again later, but the bottleneck that we should experience, what is the bottleneck? Well, it's reviews, right? No, the bottleneck is our ability to ensure quality. And however that happens. But that should be the bottleneck, right? So we have to be really leery and even push back when we're being pushed to do things to our, and that might be a hard thing for some leaders to hear, but as engineers, it needs to start with us. So, all right. So what do we do here? Where do we start? So let's say we want to make sure that we talked about context, we talked about quality, right? And assuring quality. So where do we start first? Pseudocoding the logic first is a great way to go. Doesn't have to be pseudocode in your code base, but it could be something where where you talk it out, where you really think deeply about how is this going to work. I really find it valuable to build out documents where I like go through the logic myself and I go, this is how I expect it to be built. Like that's kind of my practice too with a lot of PRs. I expect it to be built this way. Let's see how they end up doing it. But you provide that kind of guidance to the LLM, and suddenly it knows exactly where it should go, right? Us as engineers need to be aware of our code bases. We are aware of our code bases, and so there's a lot of guidance that we should be providing, as opposed to saying, "Hey, go make this button and make this button so they can change their status." Go through the steps a little bit more. How does this button how do you want this button to send the API request? How do you want that API request to get to your service layer? How do you want that to go to the database? Should you make and just be a lot more detailed in your context that you provide. Don't let the LLM decide because heaven knows, as we've seen in those numbers, it will do a poor job. Of course, this goes back to research. And I'll go into this a little bit. I do have a practice that I really like doing when it comes to doing research. And it's not really research as much as it is having a team architecture conversation. So what we'll do is we will get the engineers in a room, the engineers that are working on said task, and we'll turn on Notion. Notion is my transcriber of choice personally. I like it. There's lots of great transcribers, but that's one I like to use. Turn on Notion and we'll just start talking for an hour or two about whatever the task is at hand. We'll go into a lot of detail, like I was talking about. We'll go into a lot of detail of how to get this task completed and the changes that need to go into making it. Not saying to do this for everyone. Of course, there are small tasks that you can get by without this much rigor, but for larger tasks, it's important for us on the team to know all the innards of what's going on, right? I don't want to be an engineer on an island. I want to make sure my team's aware and we have these conversations so that we can build this context up. When we're done with our conversation and it's all transcribed in Notion, we go through the transcription, not the transcription. It usually we then take that and say to Claude, "Hey, go take this transcription and build out a spec list and build out some tasks." And then we go through those meticulously and make sure that those align with what we're doing. And then we can go to the AI once we have those edited, flushed out, and we're feeling really good about where we are. Then we go to Claude Code or Codex or whatever you're using and implement it. But it still just takes a lot of thought and a lot of engineering know-how to get there. So when I say pseudocode logic first, there's also a lot of planning involved. Of course, there's research involved if there's things you don't know. But there's this collaboration between engineers too that goes a long, long way. Okay. There's a couple other things you can do, and this is more on a team level in terms of what you can accomplish. So, context files are super helpful, especially when you have teams, when you have a repo that you have many, many people working on, and they all have different, I'd say, mastery, understanding of different areas of your code base. So you have these CloudMD files. Codex has one as well. I think they're called agents.md. I can't remember the exact name, but you basically can put these to set rules and constraints and patterns and understanding so that you're not relying on the LLM to go through your code base and understand what's going on every single time. Instead, it will rely on these files to go in and understand the rules and the constraints of a given file. A good example of this would be to say, you're only allowed to change authentication logic in this one spot. You cannot put authentication logic anywhere else in the code base. It has to go through this file, right? That will stop the LLM from going out and trying to do some things that are just not safe or try to bypass some security measures that you've already established. So those are the kinds of things that you want to put inside those context files to give that LLM, that coding agent, its guidance so that it does not go off the rails and start to cause those security issues or other performance issues that we were talking about earlier. Okay. Centralizing risk, something I just kind of mentioned in that example, but making sure there's a single owner, mainly like the files, right? Everything's consolidated. It's in one spot. And anytime those change, that should raise a flag, right? You can set these triggers here and there to say, when this file changes, we need to get a review from so-and-so, or we need to get a review from this guy or that guy, or from platform or from security. Those things are all really, really good processes to have in place to make sure that the code that we're writing and the changes that we're making, even if it's a junior to the most senior, they're all getting reviewed by the same people. We all know what's going on, right? Smaller PRs. Now, there's always give and take when there's a number involved here, especially something like lines of code. But it's more of a code smell, I'll admit. But if you're getting around the 400 line mark or getting above it, especially significantly, Think about it. Think about it for a second. Why is it taking so much code? More likely than not these days, the coding agent is bloating, right? They're usually going out there and they're just writing a whole lot of code to get something done. And it's a good time to stop and be like, wait a minute, what's really going on here? Your PR reviewer will thank you too, as you can probably imagine. The 7 file change, again, it's not really a hard number. It's a bit arbitrary, but it's kind of that rule of like a code smell again. If you're changing 15 files, you're going, wait, why are we doing so many file changes? Now, sometimes you have to, right? Sometimes there are cases where you're actually just, but you know what those are. I'm not trying to simplify oversimplify this a bit. But again, it's just good things to keep in mind. Like LLMs are great at writing a whole lot of code. And this is just one of those opportunities where you can sit there and go, when I see a PR with like 1,000 line changes, I'm going to stop and go, wait, what's really going on here? Why do we need all of these line changes? Let me understand this better. Another thing that I've seen a lot in the code from our challengers, which has actually quite surprised me, is naming. Um, there gets to be a lot of generic names that LLMs will throw into code, and that can be problematic when you try to read it. Generic names, or using small shorthand. There's just no room for that, and the way that we can remedy is quite simple. Just tell either you name it yourself, or just remind the LLM to be explicit and see how that goes. But I would lean into you naming it yourself when it's really critical and when it's important, so that you can make sure that when you come back and read it, you know what's going on, right? Finally, checkpoint commits, right? Commit logical checkpoints. These are all things that are really useful. And one tool that I'm not affiliated with them, but I'm just going to throw it out there. If anyone has used Graphite, Graphite is an excellent tool for this kind of thing. Uh, Reason being is because I'll just really quickly touch on it. It can sound a little confusing if you're not used to this kind of thing, but basically they'll make a stack of PRs where every PR relies on the previous PR, right? It's built on top of itself. But they have some really great functionality around if you have to make a change at like the bottom of the stack that then gets propagated to the rest of the stack. Really, really helpful when it comes to like building small PRs and building them in kind of some sort of scope where it's like, hey, these are going to be my database changes, and it's going to be my service layer, then it's going to be my API layer. Really, really helpful when it comes to putting all those together. So if you haven't looked into it, I recommend it. It's not for everybody and it's not for every use case, but I think Graphite and the process they have is super helpful. So, okay, this this is another thing that I've seen so much of, and I'm totally guilty of this, and I'm learning better ways now. Um, it is really easy for LLMs to make tests, and we all feel so good about it because we're like, look, I'm running tests, and it might be the first time in years that I've really written this many tests. Uh, but the fact of the matter is that these tests are usually low value. My favorite one is when they're verifying that a static map is indeed that static map. And it's like, no, we don't need to test that like this is a string. We don't need to test that this value is here because that's just what it is. Um, so there's a lot of tests that they'll write that are low value. Now, I'm not saying there's no value in them. Okay. There's value in them, and we should be having them write tests. But there's an opportunity here for us to consider what other tests we might want this to verify that this is actually working. And I'll give you a couple examples of categories. We've got edge cases. All right, there's a lot of edge cases we can test. Security is another one of those areas where we can make sure that yes, a test for this security thing is actually there. One thing that you have to be a little more mindful of sometimes with coding agents is verifying parameters, right? So sometimes I've seen coding agents where they'll automatically do it. Other times they do not, and they really should. And then those are things, of course, that you would test. So I like to think that thinking through the tests are just as important. And this is this has been said for many, many, many years, especially if you're in a TDD environment, that we should also be thinking about the test just as much as we're thinking about the context, the plan, the planning phase of that we eventually hand to the AI agent. Um, it ensures not only that the right that the right functionality is there, but it also ensures that there's no regression later. Um, you may be doing this already, but it's something that I've almost forgotten to do because I have it drilled into our a skill is after every change that it goes through and runs all the tests, that it runs through them and checks for regression. And it's amazing and kind of scary how often regression tests are failing because of something that the AI just wrote. Again, really important to have that set up, to have your test set up. It's really important to make sure that your tests are covering the proper things and the things that are critical to your business. Also important that you give the LLM, or I keep switching off between the two, but you know what I mean, the coding agent, um, the understanding and ability to go and run those tests every time. So, um, I would just put a skill. Personally, what I do is I put it in I think we have in a skill, and we also have a Claude MD file where we just say after every change, when I say it's all done, like always run the test before, before committing, and make sure that that's there. And of course, we have those things already also built in as pre-commit hooks. Um, but easier to have the LLM run it and then go back and change it them and work through the problems themselves and having to go back and forth. That also is true for UI changes with things like Playwright. If you want to include that as well, it just is one less step that you have to do. Of course, now they all have their own, they're all coming out with their own browser use so that you can go in there and simply say, hey, go spin up the app, go make sure it actually runs. I would have loved to have had that, a year ago when I was doing some heavy UI changes to have it go figure that out, so I wouldn't have to be the one to do it. But so anyway, a lot of great tools are coming out and more still to come. Like I said, I still think we're in the early stages and we haven't quite figured out where all this is going. But when we do, it's gonna be a heyday. So, um, okay. I think we know this. We've been drilled with this in our heads as engineers for many, many years. So won't say any more on that. Next, so we have guardrails are really it's guardrails is such a funny term, I feel like, because it's sometimes we say it to say like, oh, you have to make sure your app has guardrails for all these things. I don't know. It's a very vague term in terms of what actually it is. But we're gonna talk about what kind of guardrails you can put in place, and we can and then you can take that back to your work and see what how you want to implement it. But the first is skills. So skills is an excellent, excellent way of defining a process that you want the LLMs to do, and they're super useful. So, for example, as part of my job, I pull down a lot of code that I have no idea what's inside. Right? I am pulling down code all the time and running it on my machine. And so one thing I do is I have a set of skills that goes through the code and just make sure that there's nothing nefarious in there, nothing that's gonna hose my machine. And it's just part of the regular workflow. I've forgotten it's there, quite frankly. The only time I remember it's there is when I go, wow, this is taking a little bit longer than I thought. And then I look and it's like still looking through security concerns. So, but it's great because I never have to think about it again. And it just takes one more thing off my plate. So, if you have any of those, and it could be, let's see, I'll give you a couple examples here. We had one that would check our ClickHouse instance to make sure that things were, and then if there was an issue there, it would go and update or try to scale up our nodes or scale down our nodes. Um, we had other ones that would do document generators. That was a really, really useful one. So whenever anything changed, we had a skill for that. But there's just all sorts of things where it's like we always forget, right? So write a skill that just does it for you and you don't have to remember as much, which is nice. Okay. So linters. I still am a big advocate of linting. It's static, yes. It's not AI, yes. but it's still really great. And it's a great thing for the LLMs to be aware of. So again, as part of your either pre-commit or as part of your skills or your Cloud MD files, it's another great thing to put in there. It's like, hey, every now and then run this. Make sure that, when you change, when you're done changing, 400 lines of code at a time, go and run the linter and see where we're at. It'll catch a plethora of issues and mistakes well before it hits production, and it just gives again the LLM a chance to self-correct. So I'm still a huge, huge fan of linters. I know there's a lot of opinions out there about what linters should do, but regardless, I think there's still a lot of value there. Okay. Um, So you can choose as well what models you're using for different tasks. Now, it's very easy for me to say, hey, I'm going to use Opus because Opus is the best, and it is. Try to convince me otherwise. But sometimes we don't need it, right? However, when it comes to the critical gates that we have in our system, that is where we want to use the best model possible, right? Before it goes out to production, when we have a coding agent go through and review our code, you better believe that we want the best thing possible because we want to catch everything we can. So be mindful, right? We all have tokens. There's a cost. It's super easy for an LLM to become the most expensive thing in the engineering budget. But so be mindful of that. But also when it comes to critical things, like use the smartest model you can get your hands on for that verification. Um, or if you're using a lesser model, just make sure you give it enough context and enough guidance so that it can do a good job as well. But I wouldn't leave that up to a weak one, and I think that's pretty obvious, but worth saying. Okay. Finally, separate the loops. Keep the verification process distinct from the coding process. So, uh, this is where you want to make sure that you still have other eyes on your code, right? You have other processes that are going through and verifying that yes, what you have written is going to work in production. That can be QAing, that can be other agents, that can be different. There's a whole lot of ways that you can go around this. I would also want to say that verification does not happen always after the code's been pushed. So, to give you an example, we had a case where we had to move data from a Postgres database to an OLAP database because it was all analytical data that we wanted to aggregate. There's a lot of numbers that we wanted to crunch, and the verification process actually started in the planning phase. So my coworker dutifully did his research, went through the whole thing, and wrote this really great planning doc. And it was my opportunity to then verify the plan. And so I went through it myself. I read it. I made some suggestions. Most of it pretty much all looked great. There were just some additions I would have included. And then he went and built it, and it was great. It was very, very smooth. But again, we didn't rush it, right? He wrote it, and then I verified it, and then he wrote the code, and then I verified the code, and we had coding agents reviewing the code, and it was a very, very smooth process. Uh, but you want to make sure that, of course, that you have multiple people looking at it. If you ever studied or looked into, um, oh, now I'm going to forget the name. I want to say systems of control, but I don't think that's quite the right term. Where basically you don't give one person all the keys to handle finances, right? You have multiple people that have different keys that have different gates that they're in charge of. Still want that, still need that. Does it slow things down? Sure. Sure it does. But we shouldn't let that speed be the determining factor on what we do. Which leads me right to this thought. Uh, if any of you know Dex from Human Layer, segregation of duties, Jason. Yes, I think I don't know if that's the exact right term, but that's really close to it. It might even be the right one. It's been a while for me since I've had to use that term. Anyway, this is from Dex. He's at Human Layer. You may know him. He's getting pretty big on X and other places. But he said this the other day, and I think this is an excellent frame of mind to have as engineers. He said the bottleneck is your ability to ensure quality. I think that's so true. I think that is absolutely what should be the bottleneck. I know we all want to push things fast, but for heaven's sakes, slow down. And we should be pushing that up the leadership as well. That look, we're engineers. We're going to make sure things work. We're going to get more pushed out than ever before. It may not just be the 100x that some people say. It's not going to be us open clawing our way through. It's just not going to work that way. And if Anthropic's little PR snafu that they had this last week, where we all got a peek a little bit into what Cloud Code actually looks like, uh, as well as that product works, there's some raised eyebrows. So let's not be like that, and let's make sure that our quality is good. It's almost becoming a bit of a moat in a sense these days. I don't know how long that will be, but to have a quality application that's secure, it's always been a moat, I suppose, but even more so today with all the things that are going on, those metrics that we saw earlier kind of allude to that, that we need to make sure that the quality of our code is still the most important thing that we can do with our jobs. Um, I do want to point out one other thing here with this. I saw an article the other day, excuse me, that I thought was actually, the headline was kind of funny, but also said something about our jobs as engineers. It said, CEO fires all lawyers and relies on ChatGPT for his lawsuit, loses $250 million case. And I just thought, we as engineers are like those lawyers. And sometimes people feel like they are going to vibe their way out of a problem because look at me, I can build a website. And it's like, cool. Do you know what's going on in that website? Do you know what's going on under the hood? And there's a lot of opportunities for us as engineers to step in and be like, look, we know what we need to do. We know what we need to put into this. We are going to ensure that quality does not lack. We're going to ensure that your app is secure. But to do that, we need to slow down. We'll still build more, but probably at a 2x pace. And quite frankly, most companies need to be okay with that, in my opinion. Yes, we can build feature after feature after feature, but as consumers, can we even consume that many features? Not really. Not really. We're creatures of habit, and if you're breaking the habit too much, what's going on? Um, but there's something to be said about quality. I feel like right now we're in a bit of a state where quality is a moat. If you can ensure quality, you have a moat. You're going to be just fine. You're protected, at least for the foreseeable future. Call me back up when we have Opus 5.7 or whatever it is that comes out, and we'll see what happens then. But I really don't think it's going to change too much. All right. This is a little bit for non-engineers. I don't know how many people in here are non-engineers, but I just want to point this out. Uh, that as a non-engineer who's trying to build, their exposure is higher. They do not understand the ins and outs as engineers do. But engineers, so that when they build something, they're not aware of all the things. They're, as one person likes to, as one phrase I like is the unconsciously incompetent, right? Where they just don't know what they don't know. So it's very important to have at the very least, what I would recommend is sit down with an engineer and have them help you set up your workspace. They can put together a certain structure you can leverage CloudMD files. You could set rules and guardrails in there. You can set up skills, and those kinds of things will help a non-engineer go a lot further and a lot safer. So for example, if you have a PM that wants to do some changes, or you have a designer that wants to do some changes, say, hey, let me set up your workspace, but let me only give you access to these files. Like here are areas where we're going to blacklist a whole bunch of this application or whitelist some of it. And so that they have the ability, right? They could very well do a lot of meaningful work, but we don't want to give them the keys to the kingdom either, which is what seems to be happening at some places. So anyway, finally, and to that point, the next point here, never deploy anything touching auth payments or user data without a review, right? Think about blast radius and just what awful things could happen when people put those things together unknowingly, right? And then they release it because it gets through some review process, and suddenly we have bigger issues on our plate. Uh, I'm going to just come back to this slide and leave this up here as I say one more, as I kind of talk a little bit about what Gauntlet's trying to do here. So here at Gauntlet, like this is my job, this is our job to help other engineers know how to set up code bases, know how to be the AI leader that a lot of these companies need, right? We need people with good frames of mind where they think about these problems in terms of what's the worst that can happen and how do I prevent that? There's also people, we also need to have good system designers, right? We have to understand the systems that we're in, that we're working in. We have to understand the libraries we're leveraging, and how those make for a better, how we can leverage those to make a better application, um, and avoid overbloating our, all of the dependencies that we may have. We understand as engineers the qualities of a good app. It's getting harder and harder to do that when it's so easy to vibe. So what do you do? Do we just stop vibing? Do we stop using AI? No, of course not. We're going to keep using this. But we have to use it strategically. We have to use it well. And we're hearing, I'll just give you a little insight. When we talk to the companies that hire our graduates, the things that I'm hearing from them resonate there, where there are still some that want more features, and that's just kind of how they come off. I don't know if that's entirely what's in their mind, but they come off as saying like, yeah, I want these engineers to work faster and build more and more and more. And that's great, right? That's okay. But it also comes with a caveat. We're teaching them as much as we're teaching those that come to Gauntlet that there's a lot more nuance there that they're not aware of, and we'll teach our engineers how to identify that nuance, how to be a good communicator of that nuance so that they can be addressed appropriately. So a lot of what we teach, and as with every cohort, this changes, right? Every cohort gets a kind of a new flavor of it because in 10 weeks, so many things can change and so many things are becoming apparent. Um, that so where was I going with that? The next time we do this cohort, the curriculum's going to change a little bit, and we're going to make sure we focus on some issues that we're seeing pop up all over the place. That's a big thing. A part of my job is to make sure that we're staying up to date. And then when it comes to, so anyway, all that's if you are interested in coming to Gauntlet and learning more about how to be that kind of leader in a an environment where AI is working, it's thriving, but it's also very dangerous, and you want to be the voice of reason to help make sure that these companies actually produce quality output, come talk to us. It's a great opportunity. It's 10 weeks, fully paid for on our dime, not yours. And you'll have the opportunity to interface with these companies and get jobs with them. We have cohorts starting throughout the year. And so we have another cohort starting in about 3.5 weeks. So if that's too fast for you, though, we have other cohorts starting later in the year. And we'd love to have you. We'd love to have you. It's such a great time. You get, there's kind of three things that I always point out that people that you get a lot of Gauntlet. You get, of course, the learning and the opportunity to just work on your craft. We always talk about 100-hour work weeks. That's not an exaggeration. There's a lot of work, excuse me, that we're due every week. And it's just a great time to hone your craft and really dig into this stuff without any other distractions. Two, you get to interface with a lot of great companies. So you get to meet great people. You get to talk to them about what they're building and decide if that's a good fit for you and if that's something that you want to go do in the future. And of course, all these companies are offering very high salaries. And so it's a great chance to kind of bring them all together, all these companies together, all these great engineers together, and to make some great jobs happen. And then the third thing, which is a little bit in line with number two, is networking. You not only get a network though with the companies, but you get a network with a great group of people that come in with you into the cohort. You're all like-minded. You're all engineers that want to learn more. You want to push the envelope, but you want to do it in a way that produces value and quality. And that's what you get when you come to Gauntlet. A great time to sharpen that saw. We'd love to have a lot of people out in Austin where you get to be there for 7 weeks and you just get to really work and grind. It's a fun time and a great way to get to know people and also and also just land that great job. So, all right. I've been talking a lot. I'm going to stop there. Haven't seen any hands pop up just yet, but if you have any questions, whether about the topic we've talked about or if you want to talk about, um, if you want to talk about Gauntlet, I'm here to answer. So I'm going to check real quick here. Let's see. Let's see here. I had, let's see, guys, I had a document pulled up that I think I might need. Oops, not that one. Sorry.
Also, we have someone with that raised their hand, Christian. I'm going to allow it to talk.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't see it. I'm sorry there, Christian.
It's
Go
okay. You
ahead.
might have just done it.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. It resonates well. I've been doing vibe coding for the past few months, and I realized the amplification of the errors. And your point resonates well. I'm trying. For my question is related to gauntlets. I tried to apply, and it looks that there's somewhere. That the review will there will be a review, and there will be somehow a committee will be reaching out afterwards. I don't know if that like if there's any timeline on that. There wasn't. And second question is in terms of the teacher or instructors, like what are the typical profiles for the instructors in overall, and is there some kind of teacher assistance over there, or just wanted to shed some light on that, on the content process. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So first question about having people, there's somebody waiting for somebody from Gauntlet to reach out. Uh, I will, we can reach out to our guy. There's a guy here named Drew. He's the one in charge of that. And he should be reaching out to see if, let's see, have you taken the CCAT already, Christian?
I'm sorry. I did that, and
Okay.
I believe I was in the 80s something. I didn't reach
Oh,
the 90s.
oh, like the 90th percentile?
Yeah,
Okay, cool. Yeah. So, I know there's a lot of people applying, so I can take your name and send it over to Drew. But yeah, you should be you'll hear something from him, whether either way to see what's going on there. So if you haven't heard from him yet, hang tight.
thank
But
you.
on the other side of it, with the instructors, yeah, all the instructors we have are all engineers. They're either actively working at a company or they're working specifically at Gauntlet. They all have many years of experience. I'm trying to think of, I don't even know who has the least per se, but 10, 15, 20 years is typically what the people have that come and instruct here. So yeah, lots of really good engineers. A lot of I respect all of them, and they are all building great stuff on when they're not teaching. So they're very much well versed in what's going on and how to leverage the tools to get their jobs done.
Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you. I'm going to read a few from the comment or the comment section here. Let's see. Looks like Austin is looking to anybody who wants to meet up at the next AI Camp event at Capital Factory. Very cool. That'll be fun. Igor asked, when do you guys stop taking applications for this cohort? Do you guys do stuff like fine tuning or RAG? Yes and yes. Um, I will say that RAG is one of those that is ever evolving, and it's used in many companies. Fine tuning is, in my opinion, a really great one to know and understand, but there's only specific companies that will actually use that skill. More often than not, there's a lot more using of foundation models um, and using kind of the top tier things that are the top tier LLMs that are out there to get work done. So um, and as far as when we stop taking applications, I'm actually not sure, but I know that we accept people almost up to the day it starts. So I would, if you want to do this cohort, we have 3.5 weeks. I would say take the time, think it through. You have time to get through it. Don't wait too long though, because there are some things you got to go. You got to take a CCAT, and you have to go through a review process as we've been talking about. So just be aware that there's a little bit of just housekeeping that we have to do before we accept you, but we do accept people right up to the date. Let's see. I'm just looking. Okay. I have something else here. Oh, you know what? There's a Q&A section that some of you have been putting stuff in, especially you, Jay Fuller. All right. Am I running daily security audits? I don't know if they're daily or for my stuff personally. Um, More on, but there are certain things there are certain actions I take where I do automatically have security audits happening. Oh, then you raise your hand. So there's your answer. Apologies. Anyway, okay. Uh, do you also encourage entrepreneurship tracks? Christian, that's a great question. And the answer is yes, we do. We definitely push more though for getting the jobs, but there are definitely times where if you have this great idea and you vetted it out, come talk to us. I don't know if you know our CEO Austin Allred, but he loves that kind of stuff. And if there's an opportunity there, you this is a great chance to rub shoulders with him. So, yeah, that's an opportunity as well. Okay, Jeremy's asking, what kind of person is landing these 500K jobs, staff level jobs, creators of startups with 100K app downloads? Not the creators necessarily. There are some people that we've had that had many years at Google, who are very well established already in their communities in terms of maybe it's an ML or a data science kind of track or what also happens a lot of times is we get some really incredible people that come in, and there are a lot of companies that want them, and then there becomes a bidding war for that person. So it's not everybody, right? But there's surprisingly more than I thought when I started here of how many people get up that high. It's pretty it's impressive. A lot of these companies we have are willing to pay top dollar for great people. So yeah. Let's see. Drisu asked, do you have to meet any eligibilities to apply, like level of experience? Can you apply while still in school? We have started to consider people who are still in school. If you're taking a CS degree, go ahead and apply. And there's some more consideration that goes into that one, just to make sure that you're at a spot where you can do the program and be successful in it. And we have some of those happening already, which is so fun to watch. But it is something that we kind of do on a case by case basis. Typically, we require 3 years of experience. That's our baseline requirement. But if you don't, still apply. And if you're somebody that seems to have the experience, maybe you've coded a lot your whole life, or you've already had a lot of work experience, or whatever the case is, there's opportunities. Well, I shouldn't say work experience. That's what we're talking about. But if you've had a lot of good experiences and you seem like the kind of person that could handle the program and also land a job, we want to talk to you too. Jordan asks, what kind of salaries are you expecting for Gauntlet for America? Yeah, that's a good question. I would okay, so there's two here, right? There's salaries and there's total comp. So I haven't done the calculations on the total comp, but the salaries are more typically in the 150 to 170 range based on what level you get in at. I don't know if you've looked into this, but there's a whole structure of like of varying levels when you work for the US government. But the total comp is pretty high because they do a couple of, for example, there's a pension that you're getting out of that. And then there's all these other great benefits that they have included in there as well. So there's a lot there's a lot to be said for Gauntlet for America that can go a long way. So the salaries may not reflect all the value themselves. but the perks that you get with that job, I feel like make it a very viable and reasonable thing to look into. Definitely something if you're interested in that, or if you live in the DC area already, that's where a lot of the jobs will be. That's an opportunity for you. Or if you have security clearances already, that's another thing I've been learning lately is how important those can be. So, great opportunity there. Great way to get your foot in the door and just work on some pretty interesting stuff. Ryan asked, is the application process different for Gauntlet for America? No, it's the same. It's the same. You'll be, if you get a certain score on the CCAT, that's one of our main differentiators of whether you get into Gauntlet for America, whether you get into the flagship program, or if you don't make it at all. Um, so yeah. Alper asks, does Gauntlet for America require a citizenship, or would a GC be sufficient? Citizenship is required for that one. Yeah. Yep. Um, sure, you bet. Great questions, everyone. Keep them coming. Uh, let's see. Jordan asked, do people bring their own monitors to Austin? No need, unless you really have a monitor you love. No, I'm kidding. Don't even bring that. Not worth bringing it. Bring your computer, preferably a laptop, uh, as opposed to a desktop if you can. But we'll have monitors in Austin that you get at your desk. So you'll have plenty to work with there. And Austin's just a really fun, unique time. Like I said, you get just it's just time where it's just you and the rest of the cohort, and you're all just heads down, working and learning and pushing. It's a I mean, what other opportunity in your career do you get something like this, where you don't have to pay for anything. It's all covered, your food, your housing, your laundry, so that you can come and just sharpen the saw, like for 10 weeks. Well, 7 weeks in Austin, right? 3 weeks remote. Then you just do that and you get a network with great people. You get meet great companies. Uh, what an incredible opportunity that is. So it's quite the experience. I hope you all strongly consider it, and hopefully we'll see many, if not all of you, at one of our cohorts soon. All right. Any other questions? How large is the typical cohort? We typically aim for 100, 100, 150, somewhere in there. We always try to push a little bit higher than that, but you know, if we can get to 200, the material I build is and the processes I build out on the curriculum side at the very least are meant for 200. So we can push that number up if we have that number. But 100, 150 is where we like to start a lot of times. How soon after graduation do you anticipate starting with a government job? Asks Jordan. That is a really good question, and one that I don't have a solid answer for because because this is actually we're running it right now for the first time. And so there are still some expectations that I haven't gotten clear guidance on. But give me 3 or 4 weeks, and I will have a much better idea of what that looks like. But let's see, we're currently in week 7, and we have got that ball rolling of getting everybody in the GFA program or Gauntlet for America program into their system so that we can get them interviewing and getting the jobs they need. So everything's are in motion right now, and they're being very, very easy to work with in terms of getting things moving and rolling. So hopefully I'll know more concretely afterwards. Ideally, you're starting right after you graduate, or maybe a week after so you can get life in order if you need to move or whatever the case is. But I'm sure they're flexible on that too. They've got to understand that, right? So Idrisu asks, what's the acceptance rate? That's a good question. I'm not sure what the exact acceptance rate is. It's pretty low though. the requirements we have are pretty high, and there's a lot of review we do with each person. So it's not terribly high. I couldn't tell you the exact number, but I know it's definitely sub 10%, I would say. Correct me if I'm way off there, Tom, but I believe that's around the number. Um, Jordan, you're already in cohort GFA 5. Awesome. Oh, you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. I've had so much fun developing this that track. I think it's really, really cool. So you'll be learning so much good stuff. Uh, Christian, what is the ratio then for teachers to students? Good question. There's probably uh 10, I want to say. There's a lot of us that are just going to be walking around talking to you. So yeah, and if there's that's where we like to keep them. We like to send out teachers to talk to you and see how you're doing, what questions you have. Lectures, of course, will be there. So quite I would say that's a pretty good ratio. And then don't forget you have everybody else too. Now you're all learning together. Everybody comes in with different skills. A lot of times we have within cohorts, there's like little meetups that they'll have where there's like well, for different things. There's like a running group, a game group. There's groups that will do lightning talks, and we can help facilitate some of this. But we love it when the cohorts just get together and they're like, "Hey, let's do this together." It's like, "Oh, that's great," because then you're really learning more about specific topics that maybe we as teachers like don't have time to review or go into. There's a lot of stuff out there, right? And so it's a great opportunity for all of you to work together and build up those relationships and also just learn some really cool stuff. Christian asks, and are projects mainly individual in nature, or do we have team projects? You do have a bit of mix, but a lot of it is individual work. Um, there are cases where you get together with groups to discuss the projects you're building, but a lot of the work has to be done individually so we can assess your skills. At the very end, I will say there is a capstone where you will get with your team and you'll get with a team and you'll build a product on your own. So, but yes, a lot of it just by nature of having to verify that everybody is capable and able to take on these jobs. We do a lot of individual work as well. So, Jason asks, what if I have a day job? It's remote though. So Jason, I'm glad you asked this question. This is one of those situations where you've got to decide for yourself how much to put in. Um, when you come to Austin, you're not going to be able to have that job. Some people are able to some leaves, others just have to leave the job entirely. That's typically what has to happen is people have to leave the job because it's so rigorous and there's so much work to do. So um, yeah, that's not an easy decision to make, though. I fully understand and appreciate that decision. But it's kind of one of those things where it's like it's the opportunity is there. It's incredible. So I don't know where you are in your career, Jason, but if it's something you gotta consider for yourself. But I would just emphasize what an incredible opportunity it is to go and learn and just really spend a lot of time um, to make yourself the best engineer possible. Austin is saying, I'm putting in my vacation request as soon as I pass the CCAT. There you go. There you go. Just saving up that time. Hopefully you have 10 weeks. I think the best company I ever worked at only allowed us to have 6. So you can almost make that work, right? Squeeze it out. Sure, sure. Anyway. Well, great. Well, everybody, we're at time. But I want to say one more time, just thank you all for coming. Uh, really excited to have all of you here tonight and just get a chance to talk about where we are on this crazy AI revolution that we're experiencing. But it's a lot of fun. It's a roller coaster sometimes. New models come out and suddenly it's like relearning how to ride a bike, but we love it. And there's so much opportunity out there for engineers like you to go and make a real difference and a real impact. Especially as all this is happening, we are going to be that wave of engineers that really understand and learn this stuff and solve some really interesting new problems that come up. So thank you all again for coming. Hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. And we hope to hear from you more and see you at Gauntlet.